The vet locked the front door before she said the rest of the sentence. I want you to picture this. It was 11:17 at night. We were in the lobby of a 24-hour emergency animal hospital in Portland, Oregon. The rain had been coming down in sheets for 3 hours. There was nobody else in the lobby. Dr. Jefferson had walked out of the back examination room with my dog Magnus on a short leash, and she had asked me one question, and I had answered it. And now she was crossing the lobby in her green scrubs with her keys in her hand, and she was turning the lock on the front door, and she was looking at me with the kind of face I had never seen on a person before in my life. The face was not panicked. It was something worse than panicked. It was the face of a woman who had been doing her job for 15 years and who had just seen something she had hoped she would not see again, and who was now trying to figure out how to tell me, gently and quickly, that the danger I had walked into her clinic with was not the danger I thought it was. The dog was not the danger. I was the danger. And the danger was sitting in my apartment 12 minutes away, waiting for me to come home. She walked back to where I was sitting. She crouched down so we were eye to eye. She put her hand on my knee. Her hand was warm. She said, "Hadley, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I am going to tell you what I just saw. I do not want you to react out loud. I do not want you to call anybody. I do not want you to get up from this chair until we have a plan. Can you do that for me?" I told her yes. She said, "Don't let him take you home tonight." That was the second half of the sentence she had started in the lobby. The first half had been the question. The question had been, "Has anyone been alone with him tonight?" Him meaning my dog. The answer I had given her, without thinking about it, had been yes. My boyfriend Brennan had been alone with Magnus from 6 in the evening until I had gotten home from work at 9, when I had walked in and immediately known something was wrong with my dog, and had grabbed my keys and driven him to the emergency clinic. Brennan had not come with us. Brennan had told me he had a headache. Brennan had said he would wait for me at home. Don't let him take you home tonight. The him in that sentence was not my dog. My dog was sitting on the linoleum at my feet, panting, looking up at me with the kind of trust dogs offer you when they have decided that you are the safest thing in the room. The him in that sentence was the man I had been living with for the last 7 months, and who I had been planning, until that exact moment in the lobby of an emergency animal hospital, to spend the rest of my life with. My name is Hadley Westmoreland. I am 31 years old. I am a graphic designer at a small marketing agency in Portland. I have a German Shepherd named Magnus, who I have had since he was 12 weeks old, and who is the great love of my life, and who saved me 4 months ago in a way I did not realize I was being saved from at the time. Tonight I am going to tell you exactly what my vet noticed when she walked Magnus into the back exam room, and what she said when she came back out, and what I did in the 11 days after that. I am going to tell you because I think there are people listening to this who are sitting on a couch in their own apartment right now, with a partner in the next room, and a pet who has been acting strangely, and a feeling in their stomach that they have been telling themselves is anxiety. I want to tell you what the feeling actually was in my case. I want to tell you because if my vet had not asked me that question, I would not be the person sitting here telling this story right now. Before I do, hit subscribe. And tell me one thing in the comments. Tell me about a moment when an animal in your life noticed something was wrong before you did. Tell me what the animal did. Tell me what you eventually figured out. I read every comment. Now let me take you back to the day Magnus came into my life, because the story does not work without him. I got Magnus when I was 27 years old. I had just gotten out of a long relationship that had been bad for me in ways I had not yet figured out how to name. I had moved into a small one-bedroom apartment by myself for the first time in 5 years. I had been lonely in a way that felt physical. I had decided on a Sunday morning in March that I was going to drive to the local shelter and adopt a dog. I had not planned which kind. I had not been thinking about size or breed. I had been thinking only that I needed something in my life that was alive and that needed me, and that would be in my apartment when I came home from work. Magnus had been at the shelter for 3 weeks. He had been 12 weeks old. He had been the runt of a litter that had been surrendered by a breeder who had gone out of business. He had been smaller than his litter mates and had been the last to find a home. He had walked up to the front of his kennel when I had walked into his room, and he had sat down and he had looked at me with the kind of patience puppies do not usually have. And the woman at the shelter had told me, with a small smile, that he had been doing that to every potential adopter for 3 weeks, but that he had only sat down for me. I had been crying before I had even filled out the adoption form. We had been a team for 4 years by the time I met Brennan. Magnus had been the only being in my life who had been with me through every other relationship, every job change, every move. He had slept at the foot of my bed every single night. He had walked around the same neighborhood with me twice a day for 4 years. He had become, over those 4 years, the truest thing in my life, the way only animals can become for the people who pay attention to them. I want to tell you about Brennan now, because you cannot understand the rest of this story without understanding how I came to trust him. Brennan Vossler was a physical therapist. He worked at a clinic about 10 minutes from my apartment. We had met at a coffee shop in our neighborhood, in a way that had felt, at the time, like a meet-cute from a movie. He had been reading a book I had been planning to read. He had asked me about my notebook. We had talked for an hour. He had asked me out for the following Friday. He had been 34 years old, charming in a quiet way, considerate about small things like opening doors and texting me when he got home. He had been, on paper, the kindest man I had ever dated. We had been together for 7 months by the night Magnus got sick. Brennan had moved into my apartment 3 months earlier, after his lease had ended on his old place. I had said yes because the relationship had been good, and because moving in had felt like the natural next step, and because Brennan had told me, on the night I had agreed, that he had never lived with a partner before, and that he had been waiting his whole life to do it with somebody he actually wanted to wake up next to. I want to tell you what I did not see, until later, in the 7 months we had been together. I want to tell you in the order I did not see it. Around month 3, Magnus had stopped sleeping at the foot of my bed. He had moved to the floor on my side of the bed. I had thought he was just adjusting to having a third person in the apartment. Around month 4, Magnus had stopped wagging his tail when Brennan came home from work. I had not noticed this at the time. My friend Yusra had noticed it, the one time she had come over for dinner. She had mentioned it to me casually as she was leaving. I had told her Magnus was probably just tired. I had been defensive. Yusra had not pressed. Around month 5, Brennan had started suggesting, in small ways, that maybe Magnus was getting too old for the apartment. He had said the apartment did not have enough space. He had said it would be kinder to find Magnus a home with a yard. He had said it once, then twice, then 3 times over a few weeks. I had told him no. I had told him Magnus and I were a package deal. He had let it go. Or I had thought he had let it go. Around month 6, Magnus had started having stomach issues. He had been throwing up occasionally, having soft stools, refusing food once or twice a week. I had taken him to my regular vet. The regular vet had not found anything specific. She had suggested a sensitive stomach diet. I had switched his food. The symptoms had continued. Around month 7, my friends had started telling me gently that they did not see me as much. I had been dismissing this. I had told them I had been busy with work. The truth, which I had not been admitting to myself, was that Brennan had been making small comments about my friends every time I planned to see them. He had not forbidden me from seeing them. He had not raised his voice. He had simply, every time I had a plan with Yusra or my college friend Camilla, told me that he was tired, or that he had hoped we could spend the evening together, or that one of my friends had said something at our last group dinner that he had found judgmental. He had been doing this so gradually that I had not realized I had been canceling on my friends until Yusra had texted me, 2 weeks before the night Magnus got sick, asking me if I was okay, because she had not seen me in over 6 weeks. I had told Yusra I was fine. I had not been telling Yusra everything. The Tuesday night Magnus got sick had been a normal night. I had come home from work at 9. I had walked into my apartment. Brennan had been on the couch with his laptop. He had told me Magnus had been off all day. He had said Magnus had thrown up twice. He had said Magnus had not wanted to eat his dinner. He had said it like a concerned partner reporting on a mild thing. Magnus had been lying in the corner of the living room. He had not gotten up when I came in. That was the first thing I noticed. Magnus had always gotten up when I came in, for 4 years, without exception. I had walked over to him. I had crouched down. I had touched his head. He had looked up at me and his eyes had been wrong. The pupils had been too dilated for the light in the room. He had been drooling slightly. When I had tried to get him to stand up, his back legs had been unsteady. He had wobbled. I had picked up his front half and helped him onto his feet. Brennan, from the couch, had said, "I think he might be coming to the end, babe. He has not been right for weeks. We may need to start thinking about this." I had not responded to Brennan. Something in me, on a level I could not yet name, had not wanted to discuss my dog with the man on the couch. I had told Brennan I was taking Magnus to the emergency vet. I had grabbed my keys. I had walked Magnus, slowly, down to my car. I had driven to the clinic. The clinic had been quiet when I got there. The receptionist had taken my information. Dr. Imani Jefferson had come out within 10 minutes. She had introduced herself. She had taken Magnus into the back exam room. I had sat in the lobby for almost 40 minutes. The rain had been hitting the window. I had been looking at my phone. Brennan had texted me twice during that 40 minutes. He had asked me how Magnus was. He had told me to come home as soon as I could. When Dr. Jefferson had come back out with Magnus, she had not come straight over to me. She had walked to the front desk first. She had said something quietly to the receptionist. The receptionist had nodded, gathered her things, and walked into a back office. Dr. Jefferson had walked over to the front door. She had locked it. She had turned around. She had walked to me. That is when she had asked the question. That is when I had answered yes. That is when she had locked the door and crouched in front of me and said, "Don't let him take you home tonight." I want to tell you what she told me next, because the next part is the part of the story that may save somebody listening. Dr. Jefferson sat in the chair next to me. She kept her voice low. She said, "Hadley, I am going to walk you through what I just saw on Magnus, and I am going to tell you what it likely means. I want you to know that I have seen this twice before in my career. I am not going to tell you what to do. I am going to give you the information, and you are going to decide." Okay. I told her okay. Magnus has elevated heart rate, dilated pupils, ataxia, and excessive salivation. Those are classic signs of veterinary tranquilizer exposure. The most common one we see in these situations is xylazine. It is a sedative used in animal medicine. It can also be acquired by human medical professionals through certain channels. When I checked his fur, I found a small residue near his collar that is consistent with somebody handling him with their fingers after touching the substance. The residue is not on his skin in a way that would suggest he was injected. It is on his fur in a way that suggests somebody touched him. The amount of tranquilizer that has likely been administered, based on his current symptoms and his weight, is not lethal. It is enough to make him sick. It is enough to make him appear to be slowly declining. It is enough to make him appear to be at the end of his life. I sat in the chair. I did not move. Dr. Jefferson kept going. There is also something else. I felt his collar. There is a small object sewn into the lining. It is a GPS tracker, the kind that is paired to a phone. It is not the kind I have seen on regular pet collars. It is a smaller, more discreet model. I want to ask you, did you put it there? I told her no. Then somebody else did. Probably the same person who has been handling him. She let that sit for a moment. She said, "I have seen this twice before. Both cases were domestic situations. The pattern was the same. A man was using a woman's pet as a slow-developing medical crisis, to make the woman emotionally rely on him through what looked like the death of her dog. He was also using the pet's collar to track the woman's movements, since dogs go everywhere with their owners. Both of those previous cases ended badly. One was a stalking case that became a homicide attempt. The other became a successful prosecution because the woman left the relationship before it escalated. I am telling you this so that you understand what I think I am looking at right now. I am not certain. I cannot be 100% certain, but I want you to think hard about whether anything I have just said maps onto your life. I started crying in the lobby of the emergency animal hospital. I did not cry loudly. I cried the kind of cry where you do not realize you are crying until your face is wet. Dr. Jefferson did not try to stop me. She handed me a box of tissues from the front desk. She let me sit there. Everything she had just said mapped onto my life. The slow decline of Magnus. The suggestions that I should give Magnus up to a better home. The increasing isolation from my friends. The missing 10 minutes of my phone every time I left it on the counter and Brennan was around. The way Brennan always seemed to know exactly where I was, even when I had not told him. Brennan was a physical therapist. Physical therapists do not regularly handle xylazine. But Brennan had a part-time consulting role at a veterinary rehab clinic for animals recovering from surgery. He had told me about it in passing 6 months ago. I had not thought about it much at the time. He had access to that clinic's controlled substances cabinet. I had not, until that moment in the lobby, put the two things together. Dr. Jefferson sat with me while I cried. After about 10 minutes, when I had calmed down enough to talk, she said, "Hadley, I am going to be honest with you about something. I cannot legally keep you here. I cannot tell you what to do, but I want to make a few recommendations. Will you let me make them?" I told her yes. She made the recommendations slowly. She told me Magnus could stay at the clinic overnight, and for as many nights as I needed while I figured out what to do. She told me she had a friend who was a domestic violence advocate, a woman named Constance Aboagye, who specialized in cases involving animals, and who would meet me at a coffee shop the next morning if I wanted. She told me she could keep the GPS tracker in the collar for now, so that nothing would seem out of place to whoever had put it there, but that we could remove it the moment I was safely out of the apartment. She told me she had a small storage room in the back of the clinic where I could leave Magnus for the night, and she would personally stay with him until the morning shift came on. She told me, finally, the most useful thing I had ever been told by another human being. She said, "Hadley, you are going to want to confront him. Everybody wants to confront. Do not confront. The confrontation is the most dangerous moment in any of these situations. You are going to need to leave without confronting. You are going to need to leave when he does not know you are leaving. You are going to need to take Magnus, your important documents, your laptop, and the smallest amount of clothing possible. You are going to need to do it during a window when he is at work, and you are going to need to have a destination already in place. The advocate will help you build the destination. Do not tell him anything. Do not write anything down on a device he can access. Do not say anything out loud in the apartment, because some of these men install audio recording devices. Assume nothing in your apartment is private. Are you with me?" I was with her. She gave me a phone number for Constance. She told me to memorize it before I deleted it from my contacts, in case Brennan checked my phone. I memorized it. I deleted it. I did not go home that night. I called Brennan from the parking lot of the clinic. I told him Magnus was very sick. I told him the vet thought he might not make it through the night. I told him I was going to stay at the clinic with him. I cried on the phone, which was not difficult because I had been crying for an hour. Brennan asked me if I wanted him to come. I told him no. I told him it would be too painful to have an audience. I told him the vet had a chair I could sleep on. He told me he would wait for me at home. He told me he loved me. I drove to a hotel about 30 minutes from my apartment. I paid in cash. I did not turn on my phone. I lay on the hotel bed in the dark, and I did not sleep. I met Constance Aboje at a coffee shop the next morning at 7. She was a tall woman with long braids, in her early 60s, with the steady eyes of a person who has been listening to women like me for 30 years. She did not waste time. She had brought a folder. The folder contained a worksheet. The worksheet was titled Departure Plan. We spent 2.5 hours at that coffee shop. Constance walked me through every step. She explained that the most important part of leaving was timing. I needed to leave when Brennan was at work, on a day he had a long shift, and I needed to be gone before he came home. She explained that I needed to take everything I would need for the next month because I would not be able to come back to that apartment for any reason. She explained that I needed to file for a restraining order the same day. She explained that the GPS tracker on Magnus's collar and the tranquilizer residue Dr. Jefferson had documented were enough evidence to support a strong restraining order petition and possibly criminal charges depending on what the police investigation found. She also told me something I have thought about many times since. She said, "Hadley, you are going to spend the next few weeks asking yourself if you are overreacting. You are going to ask yourself if you imagined the things Dr. Jefferson said. You are going to ask yourself if Brennan is really doing what we think he is doing. The asking is normal. The asking is what every woman in this situation does. I want you to know, in advance, that the asking is the most dangerous part of the process. The asking is what keeps women in. Your asking is going to tell you that you are crazy, that you are paranoid, that you are ruining a relationship with a good man. It is going to feel very persuasive. I want you to pretend, for the next 11 days, that the asking is somebody else's voice. It is not yours. It is the voice of the relationship trying to keep you in it. You can listen to it again later when you are safe. You cannot listen to it now." I did what she said. The next 11 days were the strangest 11 days of my life. I went home to my apartment. I lived with Brennan as if nothing had happened. I cried about Magnus, which was easy because Magnus was still at the clinic, and because I missed him, and because I was actually grieving, just not for the reasons Brennan thought. Brennan was supportive. Brennan made me dinner 3 nights in a row. Brennan suggested on the 4th night that maybe Magnus had had a good run, and that maybe it was time. I agreed with him out loud and built my case in silence. Dr. Jefferson called me, on the 2nd day, to tell me Magnus was getting better. The xylazine had worked its way out of his system. He was eating again. He was walking normally. She told me she was keeping him at the clinic until I had left the apartment. She told me he was sleeping in her own office, on a small dog bed she had bought specifically for him. She told me she had been talking to him every morning before her shift, telling him I was coming back for him. I had cried again on the phone with her, in my car in the parking lot of my office, in the middle of the day, while Brennan thought I was at a meeting. I packed slowly. I packed in pieces. I took my passport to my office and put it in my desk. I took my college diploma to my office and put it in a drawer. I took the small box of my mother's jewelry to my friend Yusra's apartment, which I had not been in for almost 2 months, and which Yusra had let me into without asking a single question, because Yusra had taken one look at my face and known. I had told Yusra everything in her kitchen at 1 in the morning, and Yusra had cried, and Yusra had told me she had been worried for months, and Yusra had told me her spare bedroom was mine for as long as I needed it. On day 11, Brennan went to work at 7 in the morning for a 12-hour shift. He kissed me goodbye. He told me to text him about how I was doing during the day. He told me he loved me. I told him I loved him too. I did not know when I said it whether I had ever loved him, or whether I had loved a person who had been performing for me for 7 months. The figuring out of that question is something I am still doing. It is going to take a long time. By 11 that morning, I had moved everything I owned into a small storage unit, helped by Yusra and her husband Tariq and a moving company I had paid in cash. By 2 in the afternoon, I had picked up Magnus from Dr. Jefferson's clinic. I had cried in the lobby for the second time. Dr. Jefferson had hugged me. She had told me I was going to be okay. She had told me to call her any time, day or night, for the rest of my life if I needed to. She had given me her personal cell phone number. I have it saved in my phone now under the contact name Imani. By 4 in the afternoon, I was at the courthouse with Constance, filing the petition for the restraining order. We submitted Dr. Jefferson's documentation of the xylazine residue. We submitted the GPS tracker, which Dr. Jefferson had carefully removed from Magnus's collar that morning and placed in an evidence envelope. We submitted screenshots of Brennan's text messages from the past week, which I had been preserving carefully on a backup phone Constance had helped me get on day 3. The judge granted the restraining order on a temporary basis pending a full hearing. The full hearing was set for 3 weeks later. I was at Yusra's apartment by 6:30 in the evening. Magnus was on the couch next to me. He had his head on my lap. He had not let me out of his sight since I had picked him up. I had been petting him for almost an hour without stopping. My hand had cramped twice. I had not stopped. Brennan came home from work at 7:30. He found my apartment empty. He texted me at 7:31. He called me at 7:32. He called me at 7:35. He called me at 7:38. He texted me 12 more times in the next 20 minutes. The texts went from confused to angry to threatening to crying to threatening again. I did not respond. I had the restraining order paperwork on the coffee table in front of me. I knew by then what to do. Constance had walked me through it. The police served Brennan with the restraining order at his apartment, which had been my apartment, at 9:15 that night. He was instructed to vacate within 24 hours. He was instructed not to contact me, not to come within 500 feet of me, not to come within 500 feet of Magnus, not to attempt to reach me through any third party. He was instructed of the consequences of violating the order. He was given a court date. He did not vacate within 24 hours. He stayed for 36. The police had to be called. The lease, which had been in my name, was terminated. He was forced out by physical police intervention. 3 weeks later, I went to the full hearing. The judge made the restraining order permanent with a duration of 5 years, which was the maximum allowed under Oregon law. The court also referred the matter to the police for investigation of the stalking and animal abuse charges. The veterinary rehab clinic Brennan had been consulting at fired him within 2 days of being contacted by the police, after they confirmed that Brennan had been the only consultant with access to xylazine on the dates Magnus had likely been exposed. He was charged with 3 felonies and a number of misdemeanors. He took a plea deal 8 months later. He served 14 months. He has been on probation since. I moved to Bend, Oregon 3 months after I left him. I needed a new city. I have a small house with a yard now. Magnus has the yard he was always supposed to have. He sleeps at the foot of my bed again. He wags his tail when people come over. He is, by Dr. Jefferson's last assessment, fully recovered. He is 6 years old now. He may live another 6. He may live another 10. I am going to spend the rest of his life paying attention to him in the way he paid attention to me, when he tried, in the only ways a dog can, to tell me what was happening in our home. Dr. Jefferson and I have stayed in touch. We have coffee every other month when I drive into Portland. She has become, in a way I did not expect, one of the closest friends I have. She has told me, in pieces over the months, more about the other 2 cases she had seen before mine. She has told me she has been asked to speak at 3 conferences for veterinarians on the topic of recognizing animal-involved domestic violence. She has told me she always thinks of Magnus when she gives those talks. She has told me Magnus is the reason she keeps doing the work she is doing. Constance and I have also stayed in touch. She came to Bend last spring to visit. She brought me a small wooden plaque she had made that hangs in my kitchen. The plaque says, "The asking is the relationship trying to keep you in it." I look at it most mornings while I am making coffee. I want to tell you what I have learned because I think this is the part that may be most useful to whoever is listening. Sometimes the danger in your life is not loud. It does not arrive with a raised hand or a shouted word. It arrives in small adjustments. The dog who started acting strangely. The friend who has been less in touch. The phone you cannot find when you set it down. The slow shrinking of the world you used to live in. The way your partner is always somehow exactly where you are. The strange tiredness you feel after dinner some nights. The pet who has stopped wagging their tail when a particular person comes home. If you are a person who is starting to notice these adjustments in your own life, please do not wait for the loud thing to happen. The loud thing is what we are taught to be afraid of. The quiet thing is what most of us actually need to be afraid of. The quiet thing is what kills people. The loud thing is what the news covers. The quiet thing is what the news does not cover, because the quiet thing does not photograph well. It is small adjustments, made by a person who has been studying you for months, in the home you share with them, while they pretend to love you in front of your friends. The animals in your life will see it before you do. They have been watching you longer than the person who is hurting you has. Listen to them. They have been trying to tell you something. Magnus tried to tell me for 7 months. He stopped wagging his tail. He moved away from Brennan in our apartment. He stopped eating his food. He got sick. He kept getting sicker, in a pattern I would have figured out eventually if I had been listening, but that I almost did not figure out in time because the pattern looked, to me, like a dog who was getting old. The pattern looked to my vet like a dog who is being slowly poisoned by the man he lived with. If your animal is acting strangely, please consider that they may be telling you something about the people in your home. They may be telling you something they have figured out before you have. The bond between an animal and the person they love is not measurable in any test, but the bond is real. It is the most accurate sensor you have. Your dog has been monitoring your life longer and more closely than you have. Your dog knows the people in your house better than you do. Your dog has been telling you things you have been ignoring, possibly for a long time. I want you to start listening. I want to ask you something before you go. Tell me in the comments the moment a pet or a child or a small animal in your life noticed something was wrong before you did. Tell me what they did. Tell me what they tried to communicate.